Shabbat Shalom, Israel. Shabbat Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to say all praises to Yahweh, B'Hashem and Mashiach Yahushai. And let's send that blessings out to all the Akim that are pushing this truth out in the four corners of the earth. And let's send that blessings out to all the Akim that are making pilgrimage to Zion 3 times in the year to the 3 pilgrimage feasts, in which the Most High has commanded all the men of Israel to appear before him. And I'd also like to send that blessings out to all the Akwaf that are raising up children in the way of the Most High, so that when they grow older, they do not depart from the way of the Most High. Right, so before we get into the topic for today, which is called Easter, the pagan origins, because we didn't get to blast it when Easter came around, but it wasn't that long ago, so we're still going to put it on blast so people know that that is not a feast day, it's not a feast day, it's just a devil day that has been created by man to reverence pagan gods, right? So before we get into that, we're going to talk about the Feast of the Most High first, because those are important, right? These 3 feasts, right? Because it's a commandment for all the men of Israel to appear before the Most High, right? So this is Deuteronomy chapter 16 and verse 16. Read.
Deuteronomy chapter 16 and reading from verse 16. 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty.
Right, and they shall not appear before the Most High empty. 3 times in a year, feast of unleavened bread, the feast of weeks, and the feast of tabernacles. The Most High makes it clear which 3 feasts all the men of Israel are meant to appear before him. Right, so now let's go to Exodus chapter 23, and we're going to read from verse 14.
Exodus chapter 23 and reading from verse 14. And it says, 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in the time appointed of the month Abib. For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field. And the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. 3 times in the year all thy males shall appear before the Lord God.
Right, so 3 times in the year, all the men of Israel are meant to appear before the Most High. And again, it says the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It's just the Feast of Harvest, which is talking about the Feast of Weeks. And also it talks about the Feast of Ingathering, which is just another name for Tabernacles as well. And when it talks about the Feast of Harvest, even though it says the Feast of Harvest, the reason why you know it's talking about the Feast of Weeks is because it's talking about the wheat harvest and the wheat coming back into the growing up, and then you bringing the leaven back into the land, right? But if you want to learn about that, we do talk about that in our first fruits live. So all you got to do is go and have a look at that, right? And we touch on it because we're going to be talking about that again when it comes up to Pentecost, right? Because it's all linked up together, because that's when you still take up the first fruits of what you make with the leaven up to the house of the Creator. It's all linked together, right? So again, it tells you the 3 feasts, right? Same thing, right? Different place, right? Now we're going to go to another place which is the exact same thing, right? But we always focus on the verses 23 and verse 24, because it tells you what the Most High is going to do when we start doing these things, right? But if you read from like verse 18, again, it says the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You read down to the verse 22, and it says observe the Feast of Weeks, the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the year's end, which is another name for Tabernacles, right? And you see here, it says, now shall observe the Feast of Weeks of the first fruits of the wheat harvest. So when it says first fruits, right, or it says the Feast of Harvest, or that's what it's talking about, the Feast of Weeks. He's not talking about anything different, right? But let's read verse 23 and verse 24, and let's see what the Most High is going to do when we start keeping these things.
Exodus chapter 34 and reading from verse 23. 3 in the year shall all your men children appear before the Lord God, the God of Israel. For I will cast out the nations before thee, and enlarge thy borders. Neither shall any man desire thy land, when thou shalt go up to appear before the Lord thy God 3 in the year.
Right, so 3 times in a year, all the men of Israel are meant to appear before the Most High. right? 3 times in a year. And he says, when we do these things, then he'll make it so that the nations don't want to be there anymore. Right, but the Most High's already put that into play. That's why there's so much war going on down there, so much famine going on down there, so much disasters going on down there, because people that are there aren't meant to be down there. Right, he gave us from the River Nile to the River Euphrates, right, and that's a big, large landmass, and a lot of nations are down there. Right, a lot of nations are down there taking up land that wasn't given to them; it was given to the children of Israel. Right, but the Most High is making it so that they don't want to be there. He's putting unrest there. He's putting so many things there. Why? To make sure that they don't want to be there anymore, so that we can go there and we can take what belongs to us or what He's given to us. Right? Because everything on the earth is the Most High's, but He allows people to be in certain places or where they should live. He tells them where they should live or where they should be. Right, and He tells us we should be keeping our commandments in our land that He gave us. Right? He says, when we go into the promised land, these are the commandments that you'll keep. Because that's where we're meant to be keeping them, in that place. Right? So every time we talk about this, why? Because not a lot of people are talking about it, and this is something that needs to get out there so that people do start to consider it, because people aren't considering it. And it's an important part of our history, and it's an important part of our heritage. Okay, so now that we've spoken about the 3 feasts in which the Most High has commanded all the men of Israel to appear before Him, we are going to go into talking about Easter, right? And I've called this live Easter, the pagan origins, right? And we didn't get a chance to speak about it because Passover and unleavened bread was more important, and it came around the same time, right? Well, we came around the same time this year. So when we were talking about the Feast of Unleavened Bread, that's when Easter was coming up, and usually we'd put it on blast then and we talk about it then, but it didn't come about. So I still have to talk about it so people know and understand that that thing there, or that devil day, is not of the Most High, and people might be keeping it thinking that it's of the Most High, and it's not. A lot of our people do. A lot of our people do, because around that time, now you had the Muslims thing, Ramadan, yeah, Ramadan, where they do the fast for a month and whatsoever. And I've seen some Christians saying Christians need to do better because they need to be keeping Easter or Lent, right? Like the Muslims keep Ramadan and whatsoever, not understanding that both of them aren't dealing with the Most High, not dealing with the Most High. So no, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be keeping Easter, because it has nothing to do with the Creator. And just going and doing a little research will show you and tell you these things, right? It will show you and tell you these things. So let's get into it, right? So I'm going to bring the presentation up on the screen. If you give me a moment, and I'm going to pull it up. Okay, so Easter, the pagan origins, or the pagan origins of Easter, right? So first, I wanted to start off with a quote from a book called The Two Babylons. The author's called Alexander Hislop or something like that. Let me search it just to make sure that I've got the name right. I know it's Alexander, but I can't remember the surname. Yeah, find it for me, and that way I don't have to come off this. So, The Two Babylons,
Alexander
right?
Hislop.
Alexander Hislop, yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's the name of the author, right? So this is a book called The Two Babylons, and I wanted to start off with a quote from there, right? Because the people, like scholars and stuff like that, they've researched into it, they know these things, right? But The only way you're gonna know these things is if you're going and searching them out for yourself, right? Because they've got the history there and they've got the evidence there to tell you and show you what the history of things that you're celebrating are, right? So read this quote for me.
The two Babylons. The festivals of Rome are innumerable, but 5 of the most important may be singled out for elucidation, viz. Christmas Day, Lady Day,
right?
Easter, the Nativity of St. John, and the Feast of Assumption. Each and all of these can be proved to be Babylonian.
Right, so it's got many festivals of Rome in there, right? Many festivals of Rome, but they're saying, right, that all of these can be linked back to Babylon, right, and can be proved to be Babylonian, right, through historical evidence, right, and through historical facts and through knowledge, right. You can find out that that's where they come from, right. And the one we're focusing on today is Easter, but you can see there in their Christmas Day, Lady Day, which is also known as Mother's Day, right? You got the Nativity of Saint John, right, and the Feast of Assumption, right, and those are they're to do with what was that one now? Like some of them to do with like bonfire night and stuff like that, especially the Nativity of Saint John, right, around about bonfire night, and it was to do with trying to link it with the Christian church and whatsoever, right? And that's what it was all about. But the main one we're focusing on today is Easter, right? Is Easter. But I wanted to bring this quote up to let you know that people know that these are Babylonian in nature and in history, right? And we'll have a few quotes from the two Babylons coming up as well, right? And these things come from their own mouths, right? Which is why the next slide, right, also shows you that they know and that they're aware of the history of it, yet still they want to push this out there and still they want people to keep this, right, showing you their evil nature. Because if you know that that's against the Most High or that's against the Creator, why would you still be pushing it, knowing its origins or knowing where it comes from, knowing that the Most High doesn't deal with these things? Right, the Most High doesn't deal with these things. Right, do me a favor, right, and go to Jeremiah chapter 10. Right,
Jeremiah chapter 10.
Yeah, and read verse 1 down for a bit. I'll tell you when to stop.
Jeremiah chapter 10.
And reading from verse 1.
And reading from verse 1. Hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel.
Right, so hear the words of the Most High, Israel. Hear them, because the Most High is talking to you. He's only ever been talking to you. Right, and he's trying to get you to know and to understand, right, that he doesn't want you to do these things. He wants you to do his feast, to keep his feast, to understand that those are the things that we're meant to do, and these things that they're doing is vain, is vanity, is foolishness. Why? Because it doesn't bring nothing. Because it's a lie. It's not real. Right? So read it for me.
Verse 2. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen.
Learn not the ways of the heathen. Read on.
And be not dismayed at the signs of heaven.
And don't be dismayed at the signs of heaven, because
for the heathen are dismayed at them.
Because the heathen are dismayed at them. The heathen are dismayed at the signs of heaven. They believe in star signs, astrology, and stuff like that. They believe in that stuff and whatever. But those things, right? When you look at the stars, the sun, the moon, right? They're for times and for seasons. So yeah, they're for signs, but not the signs they're looking for. They're looking for what's going to happen tomorrow. Is it going to be good for me or is it going to be bad for me? What type of person am I? Because I was born when this constellation was in. But those things aren't there for that. They're there to tell us what time of season you're in. Right? And things of that nature. Not to tell you what your day is going to be like. That's not what the Most High made it for. Right? But people get dismayed. People get dismayed at things like blood red moons because of superstition and stuff like that. People get dismayed at many different things. right? People get dismayed at make them
shooting
things,
stars and
yeah.
all sorts
But
of
we
man.
can't get dismayed at them. Why? Because we're meant to understand that the Most High put them there for signs, right? We're meant to understand that, but some of our people don't, man. They're stuck in this matrix, stuck in the matrix, man. Not understanding that the places that we're in, right? The places that we're in, the things they're teaching us are not of the Most High. And as much as they might pretend, right? Because the scripture says that having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof, right? Because they might have a form of godliness. The scripture says that the not to marvel at false prophets, because even the devil himself shows himself to be an angel of light. Right? So when you got people going around pretending to believe in the Most High and yet still keeping these things, you can't be surprised, because there's no surprise there. Right? There's no surprise there. The people are not really looking for the truth, or they do not really want to serve the Creator. They don't want to, because if they did, then it'll be as simple as them finding out the history and being like, well, that's literally going against it. It's talking about idol gods, right? That's where it's stemming from. So let's not keep that, and let's keep the things the Most High set up, right? So read on.
Reading on. For the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workman with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not.
Right? They fasten it with hammers and nails so that it doesn't move. Right? And this is the same thing in Christmas now. Like, that's Christmas. You know it's Christmas. They deck it with silver and with gold. When else does that happen? When else does that happen? It doesn't happen any other time. So you know that's talking about Christmas. But as a whole, it says don't learn the ways of the heathen. So it's also talking about Easter. Right? Don't get caught up in it. Don't get caught up in these things, because these things have nothing to do with the Creator. And the thing is that they try to have a feel good vibe on it, and that's what it's all about to them. That's all it's about. It's not about righteousness. It's not about doing what's right. Right? It's about a feel good vibe. Right? It's about a feel good vibe. Right? And some people, because like with our feast, right? With our feast, it comes to the feast, and we say it's feast of unleavened bread, and it gets to the end. So we get to first fruits. So it's the 8th day now. We get to first fruits, and we take up our wheat. We get the 2 sheaves, and we take up the wheat. So we always talk about that. If you want to know about the 2 sheaves, go and watch our live on the feast of unleavened bread. But we take the 2 sheaves up and whatsoever, and they'll get put in the storehouses, right? And that will be given to the poor and whatsoever. And some of these people, they don't want to give to the poor. They don't want to do something good and whatsoever. And then some of them only want to do it once in the year. Once in a year, like one day. And then they go to the soup kitchens, what they call soup kitchens, and say, oh yeah, look what we're doing for the homeless. But a lot of the time, those things are government funded as well. So it's not like the people are doing it of their own goodwill, or something coming from themselves. It's coming from the government. They're just pouring it out and whatsoever. So it's not like they're doing it from their own things, or they're giving something that they have. Right? Because in reality, when it comes to these feasts, it's more about a feel-good thing than about doing what's right, or doing righteousness and stuff like that. And you know it as well, because even within our tenants, right, when we do harvest and whatever, we're not allowed to take the corners. Because it says, yeah, the gleaning principle, and you have to leave some for the poor and people that need food and whatever, so nobody's without. Because that's the systems we set up. But in this kingdom, in this society we live in, their own people are on the streets. Their own people are on the streets, right? And only like 1 or 2% of them are the richest in the world, are the richest, and they've got all these billions of dollars, and they couldn't even spend that in their lifetime, right? They could cure world hunger, they could cure famine, they could cure all those things, but no, instead of doing that, what do they want to do? Right? They want to do what the Georgia Guidestones say. Right? And for those of you that don't know, go and have a look what the Georgia Guidestones say. Because there's many things happening in these days, right, that are leading up to this. Right? There's something that organizations are trying to do, right? And they want to bring in an NWO. Right? But we're trying to bring in the TWO, the True World Order, right? Which is the kingdom that comes after this kingdom, the True World Order, right? The king that comes after, yeah. Edom will rule for a time. Edom's had his time, but the next kingdom that's coming in is going to be Jacob, right? But don't get caught up in their ways. Don't get caught up in their frivolities or their foolishness, because at the end of the day, like when it comes down to it, they're not out there. This is not our rest, right? This isn't going to lead us to the Creator. It's not going to, and it has nothing to do with Him. So we need to separate ourselves from this, right? That's the only way we're going to show the Most High that we actually do want to separate, right? Is by not doing the things that they're doing, right? By not worshipping the gods they worship, because the gods they worship are no gods. They made them with their own hands, so it don't make sense, right? But let's go on to the next slide, right? So like I said, they know, right? They know about these things, right? So just like I said, they know, right? Even in the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, it says this, right? So just read that for me, Ak. Right?
Easter,
Mm-hmm.
in the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, excerpt from page 846, it says the English name Easter is probably derived from Estre or Eostre, an Anglo-Saxon goddess to whom special sacrifices were offered at the beginning of spring.
Right. So this is what it says, right? And it tells you the name Easter comes from Eostre, right? Which is an Anglo-Saxon goddess, right? And they used to do sacrifices to this goddess at the beginning of spring. So that's why it happens around the same time every year. Right? It happens around the same time every year. Right? But even in their own books, they tell you, they know, they understand that that's where they're coming from. And when you're keeping it, this is what you're worshipping. Right? This is what you're worshipping. Right? So read this for me, yeah?
This idol god is found in many ancient cultures and is called by many names and derives from Babylon and Semiramis, Nimrod's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Estra is just another name for Ishtar, much like Ashtaroth and Astarte,
Mm-hmm.
Easter, Inanna,
Mm-hmm.
Astara, Ostra, and Easter.
Right? So I challenge anybody to just go and have a look, like search those names, and I guarantee they will come back with the same story or a very similar story, right, behind them and stuff like that. And all these different names are just coming from different kingdoms that have come up and just taken the same story or the same ideology and ran with it, right? They've taken that and ran with it and started to push it everywhere, right? And he's just stemmed from Babylon, but go and search it out, and I guarantee you'll find it, right? Read on.
It has changed over time, though. No, it has changed over time through evolution of culture and language, but it's still the same evil idol made by man.
Mm-hmm.
In Rome, she was known as Juno or Venus, But in Egypt, she was known as Isis.
Right? So you see, in different cultures, she was named different things. Right? Different cultures, this idol was named different things, but it's the same thing. Right? I just finish it out.
If you keep Mother's Day, you also worship this idol god.
Right? Because that's who they used to worship. Right? They also used to call her the Queen Mother of Heaven. Right? It's all the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's all the same thing, and they're all worshiping this same deity because it all comes from Babylon. Right? It comes from Babylon, and it's just passed down, passed down, passed down. Right? And all these different nations that popped up out over the centuries, right, over the millennia, have just taken them on and continue to use them and continue to push them on the earth. Right, and if you ever spoke to them, they might try to say that they're different, but they're not different. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. And when you keep it, and even though they try to, because what they've tried to do is they've tried to put the Messiah in there. They tried to put the Messiah in it, and the Messiah has nothing to do with this. Right? And they tried to bring it into his resurrection, but it has nothing to do with that. This is what it's about. This is what it's about. So even if you're saying that you're doing it for his resurrection, that has nothing to do with it. Right? The Messiah tells us how to remember his death, or how to remember him until he comes back. Right? He tells us how to, and Easter isn't one of them. Easter isn't something that he tells you to keep. Right? Unfortunately for people that love to keep this. Right? So read this for me, Ak.
Easter goes back to the ritual instituted by Semiramis following the death of Tammuz, who, according to tradition, was killed by a wild boar. It was told that through the power of his mother's tears, he was resurrected in the form of the new vegetation that appeared on the earth.
Right, and there's also stories where he so-called became the sun god. Right? So read on.
In 325 AD, the first major church council, the Council of Nicaea, determined that Easter should fall on the Sunday following the first full moon after the spring equinox. This is why it falls around the same time as the Passover.
Right? So it falls around the same time. It never falls exactly the same, right? But it always falls around the same time because they set it so that Easter should fall on the Sunday following the first full moon after the spring equinox, right? Which is why it comes around the springtime, right? So the Council of Nicaea, they tried to incorporate it into our writings, right? Read on.
At the same time as the Passover, around the same time as the Passover, they did this so that they could keep their congregations, because the people did not want to stop their pagan tradition. So they blurred the lines and incorporated the Messiah into it.
Right? So they did it so that they could keep the people, and so they could incorporate people into this. And this is where the whole what's it called? Replacement theology comes into it. Because they wanted to incorporate other people in and allow them to keep their pagan traditions and keep their pagan ideologies as well. Right? So they tried to become all-encompassing, because that's what Catholicism is. Catholicism means to be universal, right? Which means all-encompassing and embracing everybody and everything. But the Most High isn't like that. The Most High has elect. The Most High has chosen. Right? And he deals with a particular people. Right? And he shows you that through when he deals with individuals. When he deals with the prophets, he was dealing with the prophets on the level he was dealing with them on. Because he was giving them prophecies. Right? And then the prophecies that he gave them, right, they would go and prophesy to Israel. But Israel wasn't getting the prophecies before the prophet was. The prophet was getting them first. So he was dealing with them in a different way than he was the whole of Israel. Right? And it's the same thing with the house of Israel, is that we are his elect. And he's dealing with the nations another way. He doesn't deal with them the way he deals with us. He gives us his understanding and his wisdom, right? And we're meant to do his services. Once we're back in our rightful stead and doing what's right, then he'll use us to teach the nations. But until then, that won't happen. Right? And the elites are trying to keep us from ever getting there. The elites are trying to keep us from ever getting there. They don't want us there. Right? Which is why the system's set up to keep us like this. So let's continue. Right? So just read this for me. Yeah?
And this is an excerpt from the Catholic Encyclopedia, revised and updated. Let's deal with Easter eggs and the bunnies. The bit of information comes from their own Catholic Encyclopedia. In case you didn't know, Christianity came from Catholicism. The use of Easter eggs may have its origin in paganism.
They say may, but it does have its roots in paganism. They say may, but it does. Right? Read on.
For a great many pagan customs celebrating the return of spring gravitated to Easter. The egg is the emblem of the germinating life of early spring.
Right, so they were trying to make it it's meant to be like a fertility ritual or a fertility thing. Right, and that's why whenever you hear about the deity that they're meant to be worshipping, that's why they call her the Queen Mother of Heaven, or why they call her certain things, because they said she was the goddess of fertility and whatsoever, because that's what they were trying to push on the earth. Right, and that's why they kept it in spring, because obviously everything blossoms to life. So they've tried to make it about fertility.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? So read on.
The rabbit is a pagan symbol and has always been an emblem of fertility. The Easter fire is a custom pagan origin in vogue all over Europe, signifying the victory of spring over winter. The church adopted the observance into the Easter ceremony, referring it to the fiery column in the desert and to the resurrection of Christ.
Right, so them having a bonfire, right, was a pagan origin, a pagan thing that they used to do to signify spring coming in. Right, and basically getting warmer. That's what they were doing it for. Right, and then Christianity or Catholicism came in and tried to refer it to the fiery column when we were in the wilderness, or the pillar of fire when we were in the wilderness, and the resurrection of the Messiah, when that's not what it was. That's not what the origin of it was. So why are they trying to refer it to that when it had nothing to do with that in the first place? Right? So just finish it out for me, Ak.
And Lent is not in the scriptures, so why would you celebrate it? It became a Christian custom in the 5th century. It also stems from Ishtar and the 40 days of weeping for Tammuz.
Right. So there you can see, right, that it's making it clear that a lot of this, all of it stems, right, from Babylon. All of it stems from Babylon, and it might have evolved and changed over the time, but it's still the same thing, right? And it's written in their books. Right? It's written in their books, and they tell you and they let you know, right? Because they have to tell you. Because otherwise you could say, well, I got tripped up and I didn't know the truth. Right? But they have to give you the history so that you can make a decision. You can make a decision. Do I want to follow the Creator, or do I just want to keep following these pagan ideologies and these pagan ways? Right? So let's continue. Right? So we're going to go back to the two Babylons. Right? So read this excerpt for me. Right? It's on page 96 of the two Babylons.
The Two Babylons, page 8, page 96. Such is the history of Easter. The popular observances that still attend the period of its celebration amply confirm the testimony of history as to its Babylonian character. The hot cross buns of Good Friday and the dyed eggs of Pasch or Easter Sunday figured in the Chaldean rites just as they do now.
Right, so the hot cross buns and when they're painting eggs and stuff like that is the same customs they were doing in Babylon, right? It's the Chaldean rites. We're talking about Babylon, right? So read on.
The buns, known too by that identical name, were used in the worship of the Queen of Heaven, the goddess Easter, as early as the days of Cercops, the founder of Athens, that is 1,500 years before the Christian era. One species of sacred bread, says Brian, which used to be offered to the gods, was of great antiquity and called boon. Diogenes Laertius, speaking of this offering being made by Empedocles, describes the chief ingredients of which it was composed, saying he offered one of the sacred cakes called boon, which was made of fine flour and honey. The prophet Jeremiah takes notice of this kind of offering when he says, the children gather wood, the fathers kindle fire, the women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven.
Right, so just get me Jeremiah 7 and 18.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 7, and reading from verse 18, and it reads, the children gather wood, and the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto other gods,
right,
that they may provoke me to anger.
Right, because that's what they were doing, and provoking the Most High to anger. And when we're doing that, that's what we're doing, provoking the Most High to anger, and that's not what you want to do. We've already provoked him to anger enough. So us continuing in this, we'll just provoke him to anger even more. Right?
And this ties into their so-called pancake day as well. Their pancake day and Fat Tuesday, what they'll call it, which is around their Lent time, it's part of their customs, but that was based off of the cakes, the pancake. And there's even history where people say that the reason they bake those cakes and the pancakes and all that in the shape of like a circle is because it used to be sun worship as well. And then they used to take some of the things they produce, the baked goods, and then put them in their windows to worship other gods. And even back in the ancient times, they were doing that. And now people are still doing it today, and especially our people who are caught up in these religions, Salakia.
Should I read this excerpt as well?
This excerpt is from the Two Babylons.
Same page as well.
And continuing on reading. The hot cross buns are not now offered, but eaten on the festival of Astarte. But this leaves no doubt as to whence they had been derived. The origin of Pasch eggs is just as clear. The ancient Druids bore an egg as the sacred emblem of their order in Dionysia or Syaka, or mysteries of Bacchus, as celebrated in Athens. One part of the nocturnal ceremony consisted in the consecration of an egg. The Hindu fables celebrate their mundane egg as of a golden color. The people of Japan make their sacred eggs to be brazen. In China, to have been brazen. In China, at this hour, dyed or painted eggs are used on sacred festivals, even as in this country. In ancient times, eggs were used in the religious rites of the Egyptians and the Greeks, and were hung up for mystic purposes in their temples.
Mm-hmm.
From Egypt, these sacred eggs can be distinctly traced to the banks of the Euphrates. The classic poets are full of the fable of the mystic egg of the Babylonians, and thus its tale is told by Hyginus, the Egyptian, the learned keeper of the Palatine Library at Rome, in the time of Augustus, who was skilled in all the wisdom of his native country. An egg of wondrous size is said to have fallen from heaven into the river Euphrates. The fishes rolled it to the bank where the doves have settled upon it and hatched it. Out came Venus, who afterwards was called the Syrian goddess that is Astarte. Hence, the egg became one of the symbols of Astarte or Easter, and accordingly in Cyprus, one of the chosen seats of the worship of Venus or Astarte, the egg of wondrous size was represented on a grand scale.
Right, so you can see that there's many different places that have similar ideologies, and it all stems from Babylon, right? And they all have the egg as some sort of fertility thing, right? And they've all got a very similar story of as how this egg got there and what it was. So when people are doing this, when you have these eggs and whatever, this is what you're worshipping. This is what you're believing in, right? This is what you're propping up, right? When it has nothing to do with the creator. And this is in their own writings, this is in their own books, telling you their history, telling you where it's coming from. Right, and it's all just up to you to have a look and for you to say, well, you know what, I'm not going to keep this, or you know what, I'm going to research this and find out for myself whether it's right or wrong, right? Because the stuff is out there for you to see, right? And it's not just this, there's many different places you can get writings from, right? So just read this for me, Yak.
They say that Shrove Tuesday, in turn, stems from earlier traditions, first held by the Slavs, who believed that spring came about when the god Jariel defeated evil spirits of cold and darkness.
Right, so they talk about Shrove Tuesday, right? Yeah, so they talk about Shrove Tuesday and stuff like that, and then the Slavs or Slavics, right? They believe that their god, right?
Jarilo.
Yeah, their god Jarilo, right, fought off spirits of cold and darkness, right? And then remember, like when you're keeping these things, this is what you're upholding, because this is where these celebrations came from. They did these things to remember that what they thought happened or what they tried to portray happened, right? Read on.
For those Slavs, the pancakes symbolize the warm sun.
Right, so the Slavs use the pancakes to symbolize the sun, right? Like the Ark was saying, right? Read on.
In eating pancakes during a sacred week between seasons, they believed they were consuming the heat and power of the sun and helping Jarilo defeat winter.
Right, so when they were eating it and they were making pancakes and stuff like that, they believed that they were consuming heat, right, and somehow helping their god defeat winter.
And why did their god need help?
Yeah, true, exactly. Right, read on.
Pancakes were also put out in the windowsills as offerings to the spirit of the ancestors.
Right, like you were saying, they were put out on the windowsills, they were put into the windows, right, as offerings, right, as an offering or as a sacrifice, right? Read on.
They didn't even just hold this for a day, it was a week. And at the end of the week, they would burn pancakes on a bonfire to sacrifice to their god.
Right, so finish it out.
Mardi Gras, meaning Fat Tuesday, is another name for Shrove Tuesday. Fatty foods are now eaten before the self-denial of Lent. The idea is to have a great time before quieting down and doing penance. Just sounds like they wanted to go crazy before fasting.
Right, and that's what it is now. Like it's them trying to have fun before they stop themselves from having one or two things and whatsoever. When in reality, what they do in Lent isn't even a fast. Isn't even a fast. They give up like one thing and whatsoever, and then say that's a fast and whatsoever. But you're not really afflicting your soul if you're just giving up the one thing and whatsoever, unless that one thing is so it's so important to you and whatsoever. But a lot of the time, just the one thing isn't really gonna afflict you, unless it's proper integral to your life, right? Unless it's proper integral to your life. So I'm not gonna say there isn't something that somebody could do, right? But in reality, like the way they do it, they do something, but it doesn't really stop their quality of life, or it doesn't really afflict them too tough and whatever. So it's not really a fast. So anyway, when they're doing that, when they're doing Lent, has nothing to do with the Creator, has everything to do with to paganism and the 40 days of weeping for Tammuz, right? So then read this bit for me as well, Ak.
Ash Wednesday came from the Nordic tradition of putting ashes on your forehead, which they believed would gain them protection from their god Odin. The laying on of ashes would occur on a Wednesday, the day that was named for Odin.
Right? So the Ash Wednesday came from this, right? And this is what you're believing in when you keep these things, or when you say, "Oh yeah, I'm Catholic, or I'm a Christian, and it's Shrove Tuesday and it's Ash Wednesday," and you really believe in these things. This is what you're believing in, right? And now in Catholicism, look what they do: they put ashes on people's heads in the shape of a cross. Right, in the shape of a cross. Right, and it's the same thing, and they think they're going to get some protection. Right, but really, that's all pagan ideology. And some of our people, they get wrapped up in it. They get wrapped up in this foolishness, wrapped up in this nonsense, wrapped up in things that have nothing to do with them. And they've got other people telling them how to interpret their book. Or they've got other people telling them how to read their history, or what part of their history is real and what part of their history is fake. Trying to tell them. Your other people trying to teach you about your history. But in reality, it's your history, so you're going to resonate with it more than they will. They're not even going to resonate with it. They're going to try and take it and think, "Oh, it's got blessings in here. We want these blessings." Not understanding that the blessing is only for the children of Israel. Right? And then trying to tell us that we are Gentiles, but we're not Gentiles, we are Israelites. We are Israelites, and they try to make it all about, and that's why they got this whole equality thing going on and stuff like that, to try and level the field and whatever, and make it like it's an all equal thing. When in reality, the only reason why they're doing that is because they don't want to pay for their mistakes. They don't want to pay, not from it. It wasn't a mistake for them. They wanted to do it, right? But they don't want to pay for what they did.
They don't want the consequences.
Yeah, they don't want the consequences for their actions. They don't want it. So that's why they got this whole peace thing. And whatsoever, but because they brought this peace thing, a lot of our people are getting wrapped up in that peace stuff and whatever, which is a load of lie. Because if the situation was right for them to do it again, they'd do it again. They'd have us in the same situation they had us in before. But because the climate isn't right for that to happen, then they're not doing it. They're not doing it. So that's the only reason why people are getting wrapped up in it, thinking, "Oh, yeah, these people have really changed, or they really do care about us, that racism isn't the thing anymore," and whatsoever. And you got a lot of our people doing that, and then believing in this garbage because they don't understand the Most High don't deal with this garbage. He don't deal with it, right? So that was the presentation I had today, right? So there's quite a bit of information in there, right? You can even go and have a read, because there was a bit more in the two Babylons, but I didn't want to overload you with information there. But if you go and have a read on there, like, it literally takes you through Easter and stuff like that, and the things that they used to do, right? And it will give you understanding as to where it came from and why you shouldn't keep it. Why you shouldn't keep it. You'll understand more by reading where it comes from.
And just to add, Salakia, a lot of people believe that because it's in the Bible, or it's in some translations of the Bible, it must be of the Most High. But no, it's not. What they're trying to do is just trying to shroud or turn people away from the Most High. That was put in there in some translations when Israel fell up. But if you have understanding, you understand what we need to do to study to show ourselves that it's Passover we're supposed to be celebrating. It's the Feast of Unleavened Bread we're meant to be celebrating, not celebrating these customs that the world celebrates. Telling children foolishness about a bunny laying eggs when bunnies don't lay eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Getting your children to do Easter egg hunts, and unless you tell the schools, oh, my child can't partake in that, then they'll have them doing that foolishness. So that's the reason we need to like study to show ourselves approved, because just because it's there doesn't mean that we're supposed to be keeping it. So like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. So now I've pulled up the Hebrew word of the day.
Salakia.
Oh, Salakia.
But just before you get into the Hebrew word of the day,
Yeah.
I'll just like to say all praises to Yahweh Bashim Mashiach Yahweh Shai, right? And all peace and blessings and love to the brethren, the children of Israel, wherever you are, right? I hope you have a peaceful Shabbat. Because Jordan brought up the fact that it is written in the Bible, right? The word Easter. What I need you to do is go into the word Easter and then pull up all the other translations, all the other books, the translations, right? So, because people will read King James and they will pick out the Easter, which is only once in the whole Bible, right? And they will say, see, they were keeping Easter, which is a load of garbage. That word was inserted there, right? And it was inserted there to cover the word Pesach, right? Or Pascha, right? Which is Passover, right? So you need to get the scripture, and then you need all the other translations, and let's see what all the other translations say, right? And see if they agree with King James, the King James Bible, right? So this is what you have to do, because you can tell them it's in the Bible, and you can assert or you can affirm, oh, it's not meant to be Easter. It was inserted in there, but without the proof, right? Because all the other translations can't be wrong, right? If one person is shouting from the hilltops about a particular topic, right, and then 19 other people are saying your topic, the topic you're dealing with, is dealing with this, right? But you're saying it's dealing with that. The one person can't be right over 19. You can't be right over the 19, right? Unless the 19 is false. But when you read the narrative of the book, we never kept any feast called Easter, right? So the other translations tell us what is supposed to be written there, right? So have you got the King James version first?
Yeah, there it is. And it reads, Acts chapter 12 and verse 4. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people.
Right, and then a Christian will read that and say, you see, they were keeping Easter. Now let's go and have a look at all the other translations.
Start from the top.
Right, so you can go back up now to the top. Right, you can go back up to the top.
This is the NIV, the New International Version. It says, after arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover.
After what?
After the Passover.
Let's go New Living Translation, and let's just deal with after Herod, where it says Herod intended.
And it says Herod intended to bring Peter out for public trial after the Passover.
Right. So that's another witness, right? Another translation that tells you it's supposed to be Passover. Read English Standard Version.
Intending after the Passover to bring him out to the people.
Let's go Berean Standard Bible.
Herod intended to bring him out to the people after the Passover.
Right, the literal Bible, Berean literal Bible.
Intending to bring him out to the people after the Passover.
We're going to jump King James. We're going to go down to the next one after King James.
Even the New King James.
Right.
To 4 squads of soldiers.
Because they revised it.
Yeah, calm.
It's a revised version, right?
Mhm.
And they've changed it from Easter. Read it.
Intending to bring him before the people after the Passover.
Right. The next one.
Intending only after the Passover to bring him before the people.
Next one.
Intending after the Passover to bring him out before the people.
Next one.
Intending after the Passover to bring him out before the people. Intending after the Passover to bring him out before the people.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Planning after the Passover to bring him out before the people.
Christian Standard Bible.
Intending to bring him out to the people after the Passover.
Holman Christian Bible.
Intending to bring him out to the people after the Passover.
And you can go on and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
You can go on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
The word should be Passover, not Easter. So people who want to keep that, they will find that one solitary word which was inserted in there when it should say Passover, right? And even that word was revised, and they changed it from Easter back to Passover in the new translation, New King James, right? And every other translation has Passover in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that word Easter shouldn't be in there because Israelites never kept anything called Easter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I had to bring that out because Jordan mentioned that it was in the Bible. So some foolish Christians or foolish people will go look at it and go, yeah, it is written in there. That means it must be right.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not right. It was interpreted and inserted in there and it was incorrect. Right? So you got to get that in your mind. Easter is of the devil. It has nothing to do with Yahweh. It has nothing to do with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It has nothing to do with him whatsoever. It's man-made, right? So anybody keeping that is just worshiping devils, right? So with that, I'm going to let you continue and progress on to the word of the day.
Mm-hmm. So let's pull the word of the day. What's the word of the day?
Kayam.
Kayam.
So like the Axe said, we're gonna pull it up now. It's coming up on the screen. And like we do every live that we do, I'll go into one of these words that's a Hebrew word, an ancient Hebrew word. A lot of these you can find in the Strong's concordance, and you can tie them up because it's labeled out, and then have a look at some of the meanings, the exhaustive meanings, and all that. But the way we're going to break it down is all the way down to the phonetics and all the way back to the pictograph. So what each one means. And we do this every week. And then after we've looked at every single part of it, we're going to try and piece it together and create an understanding that matches what the word means. And the Hebrew word for today, like the asked, is kayam. Kayam. And kayam is the Hebrew word for endure, meaning to endure or enduring.
1 second now. It's not turning off.
It froze.
Yep.
Saying it, Sharon. So like, yeah, bear with us. We're just having some technical difficulties. But yeah, like I was saying, while he's sorting that out, I say this every week, but it's very important for us to learn our language, to go back to the Hebrew, because when the scripture says that we have to become like babes, a lot of the time it means we have to learn again. One thing about being mature or grown up is that sometimes you realize that you were taught wrong, and it's about unlearning what you were taught wrong and relearning. It's a lot of unlearning and then a lot of relearning. And for us to understand the scriptures, then we need to unlearn and relearn. They have what's called the Western world have what's called an alphabet, But they're getting that from our scriptures, because their alpha comes from our aleph, and their bait comes from our ban or our bait. But we don't call it our alpha. We don't call our alphabet because our vowels or our alphabet go from aleph to tav. Because why would they call their aleph bait? Because it makes no sense, because it's just the first two letters. Showing that's what they give. That's the kind of information they want you to have or understand from it. Whereas the aleph tav is the full picture. It's the beginning and the end. And that's about Messiah. That's about the Father. That's about Yah. Because they teach us in completeness. As long as you're seeking and trying to research, and like the scripture says, studying to show yourself approved, he'll open up understanding. And you can learn a lot just from these words, man, just from the Hebrew. Because like we brought out before, and I'll just mention it, if you go into your Apocrypha and go to Sirach, in the prologue, before the actual chapter and verse, it says that words that are translated from Hebrew into another language don't hold the same weight or force. And it's not a little change, or it's not a little difference, it's a big difference. In so many words, paraphrasing. So we need to learn this, because it's going to give us better understanding and better wisdom. So like I said, the word for this week is kayam, kwa yama. And it's the Hebrew word for endure, or to endure. And it's built off just these three vowels, the kaf or the kwa, which phonetically makes the kwa sound. And as you can see from the pictures, we'll go through them. We'll start with the pictograph. It literally shows us the sun on a horizon. And then if we jump to the paleo, the pictures, it's pretty similar. You can see that it's supposed to be like a river coming down, and then at the end of the river, you can see the sun on the horizon. And the only one that kind of changes or diverts from this is the modern script, which you'll find a lot of the time. You'll find that a lot of the time, that's where the biggest change comes, and it stops looking like it, because, like I said, they're trying to keep us from knowing our culture and our heritage. So we've done the sun on the horizon, we've done the kaf, then we move on to the yad, which phonetically makes the yah sound, the yah. And we know that from the pictograph, it's supposed to be a hand or an arm, or a hand and an arm. And we jump to the paleo, and this is supposed to be the same thing. There's a bend in the arm, and it's supposed to be a hand at the end. It looks similar to a certain degree, and that's the yad. And then obviously in the modern, like I said, it's the biggest change, and it just looks like a little comma of some sort, but that's what they use. And the more like newer Hebrew scripts that you read, you'll see the modern script more. So it's important to learn, because some people will say, I'm not learning that. I'm not learning that because that's not the ancient Hebrew. But then if you want to know what these devils are doing and how they're inserting or taking out of the new literature they're writing, especially some of these so-called rabbis and people who are doing their little additions to scriptures, you can see where they're adding stuff in and what they're adding and why they're adding it, because you understand what they're doing. They can't confuse us anymore. So then that's the yad. That's meant to be a hand or an arm. We'll go through the spiritual meanings in a sec. And then we've got the mem, which makes the mah sound. And the mem is meant to be, if we look at the pictograph, it's meant to be a wave or water. And again, if you can go to the paleo, it's supposed to be a wave or water. It's just that with this, it's got like a line coming down from the wave or water. That could be a river, it could be anything, but it's still meant to be waves. And it looks similar. And then obviously, like I said, the biggest change always comes from that modern script. And it looks nothing alike. It looks nothing like water. So, but that's what they do. And now we can go on to what the actual meanings are. What does it spiritually mean? What can you discern from these letters, as we would call them in English? Now, the spiritual meaning of the kaf or the kwa is to condense, to circle, or it can mean time. So when you have words that contain the kwa, you know that that's what it's referring to. It's referring to that. And you can take meanings from the pictographs, because it's talking about a sun on the horizon. That means you're moving towards something. You're moving towards something good, because the sun represents the Messiah. The sun represents heat and life, because that's when all the plants start growing during that springtime, when the sun starts coming back in, and we start getting more of it. Then growth comes, life comes. Then we'll move on to the yad, or the ya sound, and the hand and the arm, which means to work, because that's what you do with your hands and your arms. You work. It means to throw, meaning that you're teaching, because to throw something relates to Torah. It relates to what Torah is, because throwing is what we do with the word. We throw it out there. It's relevant to the understanding of the arrow and hitting the mark when it comes to Torah, because that's our goal. Our goal from Torah is to hit the mark, hit the nail on the head, to achieve what the Most High wants us to achieve. And the only way we can achieve that is by going through his instructions. And it can also represent to worship, because the Most High told us when we're praying how we should pray. And a lot of the time when you see praying or worship denoted, you have your hands raised. You have your hands raised. So it also means to worship, and also through your work you worship the Most High. The things you do, worship the Most High, because then people can see you actually care about the Most High and the things he said and the things he does. And then finally, again, we got the mem, the water, the wave, and this spiritually denotes or means water. It can mean chaos or destruction. It can mean something mighty or big, because the sea is mighty, the sea is monstrous, the sea can be the sea is massive, the oceans are massive. So it can also denote size, and it can mean blood, because obviously again it represents chaos, destruction. Because as well with the sea can be choppy, the sea can be dangerous, water can be dangerous, and all of these things come together. So what does the word kayam mean? It means we're trying to endure. So now I've put these spiritual meanings together in a way, and I'll get the Akim and the Elder to give their take on it, because I know we're all going to have some understanding to what it means. And the word endure, or enduring, I've put it down to continually representing that circle over time, to do the work, to throw, meaning keep the commandments and the instructions in Torah, and worship, yeah. And this is going to protect us. The endurance, being able to endure to the end, is going to protect us from the chaos or blood that's going to come from the Almighty. Because when the Messiah returns, he's coming back to avenge or bring the justice of the Most High. He's going to avenge him and all the wickedness that's been done on the planet. He's not coming back with roses. He's not coming back with thingy. But the only people who are going to be safe from that judgment are those who endure. So this word gives us the understanding on how we're supposed to endure. We're meant to continually over time do the work. There's no stopping it. A circle continues. A circle doesn't stop. There's no break in a circle. So we're supposed to be in that manner over time, doing the work and work and work, and then we will be saved from that destruction. And the same way the scripture says, those that endure to the end, to them will he give power over the nations. We can't get power over the nations without Kayam, without that Kayam. So that's the Hebrew word of the day. I hope you got a little bit of understanding from it, and it makes some kind of sense. So I'm going to hand it back over to the app, see if you got any additions to the understanding or the meaning, and then to finish off.
Right, so I mean, I got something from it as well. I mean, in terms of like the qua as well, because obviously you talked about circle and time, which is basically meaning to continue to and wait out the time and stuff like that. But it also says condense, right? And Messiah tells us to endure, and so then Messiah tells us to endure as well, right? Because when Messiah came, he did come speaking his own words, but they told us to endure, right? And they said that that for the elect's sake, that time was going to be shortened, right? So for those that endure, that time is going to be shortened. That's going to be condensed, right? That's going to be condensed. And like the Ak was saying, like the hand and the arm to work, because endurance isn't going to come without work. You're not going to endure without doing something. If you're standing there, you're not going to endure. You're gonna end up at a point where you can't do it. You can't do it anymore because you're not doing anything to keep yourself in that endurance state, right? Do anything in that endurance state, right? And because the Messiah came, right, through his blood. That's the reason why we have this. We're able to endure, right? But that's the only way these days were shortened for our endurance as well. So when it's got the water, it's talking about one is talking about the Holy Spirit, because we need the Holy Spirit to be able to endure and get understanding. That's what he died. That's what he died for. So that, or that's what he went back to heaven for, so that he could send us the Holy Spirit and whatsoever. And also, it's talking about his blood, because he shed his blood for us, so that we can endure. So those days could be condensed, could be shortened, right? And that's what I can see in there.
Khan.
So just hand it over to the elder to see what he can see.
Yes, lucky. Yeah, it was very, very good. The word is a very, very nice word, endure, right? The main part of it, I mean, the last bit that Eva touched on, dealing with the water, that's definitely representative of the Holy Spirit and the blood of the Messiah. That's definitely dealing with that, and what it's there to redeem us from the chaos which is to come, right? It's there to redeem us from the chaos which is to come. But so I'm not going to deal with that, because that's what it means, right? I'm going to jump up back to the sun on the horizon, right? So the quad, right? Because you see the sun on the horizon twice in a day, right?
Yeah.
You see the sun on the horizon twice in a day. You see when the sun is setting and when the sun is rising, right? So the important bit of this is that the Most High is trying to show us, right? Because when you read the scriptures, it says that the evening and the morning were the first day. So the day does not start. Our existence did not start in light, right? It started in darkness, spiritual darkness. So the sun was on the horizon, but it wasn't a daytime coming. It wasn't a daytime coming. It was a nighttime coming, right? So when it says condense, it means that, as you said, quite rightly so, that the Most High was going to shorten those days, because from Adam to the kingdom, the Most High made those days short. He's done it in the shortest possible time he could possibly do it in, right? So he's condensed it, and we're just doing what you call a circle. That circle of time is generations, right? You're being born, you're having children, your children are having children, you die, right? And then the cycle goes on and on and on and on and on. That's the cycle. So the reason you have to understand that, because we're in the nighttime, we're not in the daytime yet. We have not come into the daytime as yet, right? And that's why the next letter, which is Ya, which is the Yad, right, is an arm or work, right hand to work, right, to worship. So to worship the Most High, that's a work in itself. Because to worship him, that means you've got to keep his laws, his statutes, his commandments. You can't worship him without doing those things. You can't worship him without honoring those things which he has said is in the earth, right? The work that you have to do is the preaching of the gospel, or the preaching of his kingdom, and what is needed to receive the kingdom. The throw part is the important bit, right? Because that throw is the Most High saying the children of Israel have got to teach their seed. Why? Because that throws the prophecies and throws the understanding of the Creator into the future, because your children get it and get the understanding. They pass it on to their children. They get it and understanding. They pass it on to their children, right? Until it comes to that part where the Most High, when we get down to the water, right, and the blood and the chaos, right, until that time comes in. Why? So that the children, that generation, can be prepared to receive the promises, that they can be delivered out of the wrath of the Most High, right? Because that it's not going to come just by me saying I believe, it's not going to come just by me saying I believe in the Most High, right? You need the Spirit to come to give understanding, to wake us up, and you need the blood of Christ to wash us, blood of Messiah, Mashiach, to wash us of our past sins, right? and that is to protect us from the chaos, the mighty chaos which is to come, because the thing which is going to happen on earth has never been here before, right? It's never been here before. So that's what I see in there, right? And as I said, it's another beautiful word, endure, right? So it has all those principles in it. So you have to understand you're doing your life. You might not see things happening, the prophecies coming to pass in a great scale. Not that prophecies ain't coming to pass. Prophecies are coming to pass every day. You just don't see them, right? But the point is, you might not see some the prophecies on a great scale. You might not see the return of Messiah, right? That will be another generation, a generation that comes after you, right? But the point is, the reason why they will be ready to receive it is because you threw the word, you threw the understanding into the future, right? So that they could take up the javelin or the spear and they could hit the mark with it, right? So that's what I see in there. So it's another beautiful word, right? So with that, I'm going to let you continue what you're going to do, whether you're going to close out or what.
So we're gonna say the final scriptures that we usually talk about when we talk about the gospel of the kingdom. That was really good word, endure. So the first one we're gonna go to is Isaiah chapter 8 and verse 20, which I'm just gonna pull up if you give me a moment. Salakia.
Isaiah.
One second.
I'm not sharing it. Isaiah chapter 8 and reading from verse 20, and it reads, to the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them.
Right, to the law and to the testimony, to the song of Moses and to the song of the Lamb, to Torah and to Messiah. If you're not speaking of both these things, because there's no light there, it's the same as having a torch and no batteries, or batteries and no torch. You're not going to get light without both of them. They both go hand in hand. Messiah spoke of Torah and Torah spoke of Messiah. You can't have one without the other. So they both go hand in hand, and they should be your foundation in this walking in the truth. Because without the Messiah, you ain't got redemption. Without Torah, there's no order. You need both of them, right? And for those that don't want to, that say that the law's done away with, I want to know where your order is. And for those that say Messiah, that Messiah hasn't come, or Messiah isn't here, or they don't believe in the Messiah, then I want to know where your redemption is coming from, right? Those are my questions to those two different sides of the spectrum, right? So then let's go to 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 3. Right, so read that for me, Ash.
2 Corinthians chapter 4 and reading from verse 3.
Right.
But if our gospel it be hid, it is hid to them that are lost.
Right, so if our gospel's hid, it's hid to them that are lost. Right? If our gospel is hid, it is hid to them that are lost. Right? So either those that are going to be, those that are lost right now and that don't want to know, right? There's some people that don't want to know and they won't ever know. Why? Because they're comfortable in captivity, like my Ak likes to say. But then there's those of our people that the Most High knows will accept it at a certain point, and He knows the right time and the right season for them to get the understanding. So at that point, they'll be found and they'll find the truth, right? And some people will have to go through harsh things the same way Apostle Paul was knocked off a donkey on the road to Damascus and made blind. So some people are going to have to go through harsh things, and harsher things are coming, right, soon in the end time. So, I mean, some people are going to have to be jolted out of their sleep, and that's what will happen, right? Some people have woken up now and they haven't had to be jolted out of their sleep too tough and whatever. So now they've woken up and whatsoever, and it's because the Most High knew He could wake them up at this time. But some people, they need a bit of a kick to be woken up, right? Like the saying goes, if you can't hear, you must feel, and some of us have to feel it before we get the understanding, and the whole of us had to go through it for us to get to this point where we're now waking up, because we're asking the question, why are these things happening to us, right? So let's go to Matthew chapter 24 and verse 14.
Matthew chapter 24 and reading from verse 14. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come.
Right, and this gospel of the kingdom is going to be preached everywhere in all the world, right? For a witness unto all nations, and then the end's going to come, right? The gospel is going to be preached everywhere, right? It's already been preached in a lot of places. We've got YouTube, street preaching. You've got people on other sites as well. You got people typing up information. You got people having books out there. What the information is getting out there, man? But the gospel is being preached, man, all across well, not everywhere just yet, because we know it hasn't happened because the end hasn't come yet, right? But it has to go out. Why? One, for us, because we were scattered amongst all nations. It has to be preached in all nations. And two, to tell the nations to let us go, right? And the longer they keep us in captivity, is the worse the punishment's going to be. So that's what the warning is for them, right? That's what the warning is for them, right? So then let's go to Matthew chapter 26, and we're going to read from verse 6.
Matthew chapter 26 and reading from verse 6. Now when Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head as he sat at meat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, to what purpose is this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. When Jesus understood it, he said unto them, why trouble ye the woman? For she have wrought a good work upon me. For ye have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always. For in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this, that this woman hath done, be told for a memorial of her.
Right, so no matter wherever the gospel of the kingdom is preached, right, the memorial of this woman has to be spoken of, right? Because when the Messiah came, he didn't come speaking his own words. He came speaking the words of the Father that sent him, right? And the Most High said that any words that she puts in his mouth that we don't listen to, it's going to be required of us. And she comforted him at the time when he was going to go through the tribulation. And without him going through the tribulation, we wouldn't have this second chance. His beard was ripped out. He was spat on. He was called all the names under the sun, right? He was ridiculed, right? And does that sound familiar? It should do, because it happened to us as well. But he did it first, and he didn't even sin. So we had to go through it because that's what we were doing. But he didn't do that. But he did it. But he sacrificed himself, right? He laid down his own life for us so that those days could be shortened, and it goes well into the endure word, because he's allowed us to have such a short time where we should be able to endure, right? Because he sent the Spirit to give us understanding, to give us wisdom, and to help us through this time, and to wash off and his blood to wash us of our sins, right? So we've got this chance and we've got this opportunity, and this is a small thing that we can do to basically get the Most High to know, and to get the Most High to know that we understand, man. We understand that he sent his only begotten son, and that his son came and did what he did, right? And that's one thing that we can do. Another thing is keeping the commandments. Other things, you got other things you can do to show as well. But these things are written for you to do, so that the Most High knows who his people are, because those people, or those of his people, right, that truly believe in him, will do that, and will keep it, right? So let's go to Matthew chapter 23, right, and verse 39. Actually, yeah. Do it from verse 38. Or read from verse 37.
So this is Matthew chapter 23, reading from verse 37. And it reads, O Jerusalem, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not.
Right? As many times the Most High would have gathered us together, man, but we didn't listen, and we killed the prophets that He sent to us. Right? So we would have been gathered a long time ago. Right? We were sent many warnings, many warnings, many things, but we didn't listen. Right? And then it says, read verse 38.
Behold, your house is left unto you desolate.
Right? The house is desolate, man. The whole house of Israel is desolate. The whole house of Israel was broken, right, and brought down to nothing, right? Which is why we are where we are. Now we're being raised back up, but we weren't. We were desolate, right? Verse 39.
For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth, till ye shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord.
Right? So he says, we're not going to see him until we say, right, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord, right? So we're not going to see him until that point, until we are believing in Messiah, until the people believe in Messiah, right? There's a lot of people there's people out there still that don't believe in Messiah, or they don't know the truth. They don't believe in the true Messiah, right? A lot of our people are in Christianity, so they've got soft Messiah in them, or Caesar Borgia, right? But until they understand, right, the real Messiah, the true Messiah, right, that's coming in the name of the Most High, right? Then you know, until that's happening, until there's because there's a quota, there's an elect, right? There's 144,000, right? And we're not gonna see the Messiah until those people, those elect, are sealed in their foreheads, right? Because the Lamb is gonna be found on Mount Zion with the 144,000, right? And that's when we're gonna see him, right? That's when we're gonna see him. When we're saying, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord, right? Until people understand that he was sent by the Father to do the job that he was sent to do, right? He did a job that he was sent to do, and they need to understand the true meaning behind why he came. Not that he came for everybody, because he came for the children of Israel, right? And we have to understand that, right? That he came for the children of Israel to redeem them, right? To do that. And that's why even his name itself, right, Yahushai or Yeshua, means Yah saves, because he's coming in the name of the Most High. Yah saves, right? And he was going to use him to save us, and that's what's happening, right? That's why we're in this situation right now. That's why we've got grace. Without the act or the action, we wouldn't be in this situation now, right? So with that, I'm going to say Shabbat Shalom. I hope you got something from today's live. Please check out our website, israeliteheritage.com. Subscribe to our channel, Israelite Apostolic Heritage. Even on this channel as well, Israelite Apostolic Heritage Through the Fire. We also have a backup channel now, Israelite Apostolic Heritage Regeneration as well, which we're re-uploading our old videos on there as well, so that if the channel does go down, because they are trying to block us out because we're bringing the truth out and whatsoever. So if that channel does go down, we've got another channel in the works basically to keep that up and running and to keep that content going. So just subscribe to that one as well. Also check out our Facebook page, Israelite Apostolic Heritage. And check out our individual pages as well. If you want to message us on there, it doesn't. We don't mind. Our inboxes are always open. I'm Iba Solomon. You got the Elder Thakoa Shalamat, and you also got Ma'akia Yardan Ben Yasharala. And you can always message us and whatsoever. Even if you want to go on the website and you want to send us a message on there, you can also do that too. So I don't know if you wanted to say your closing statement, Alder.
Yeah, just it's the same word that was brought out today, which is what I always speak about, which is endure. You know, that the time is short, right? We're at the end of this, right? So it doesn't make sense you picking up the plow and then returning it, and then turning away from it, at this
Late.
period of time. If you're going to pick it up and use it, and keep it before you at all times, so that you can find yourself worthy, right? It doesn't matter what happening in the world. It doesn't matter even what's happening in your life. Hardship can come, sickness can come, anything can come, right? And some things are there and allowed to happen for testing purposes. The Most High will allow things to happen to test you, to try you, to try your spirit. Because guess what? Nobody wants a fake, somebody who gives you fake love. Nobody wants that, right? So before a man marries a woman, he goes through what you call the courting stage, right? It's called betrothal. And while you're in that stage, you're finding out about each other, and getting to know one another. And then you make a decision at the end of that. Do we go ahead and become man and wife, and build a life together? Now, if the circumstances are right, then you go ahead. But on either side, if there's something lacking, or there's a flaw, or there's a problem, then either partner can say, well, you know what, I'm not going to do that, because that's the rest of my life. I'm gonna have to commit the rest of my life to somebody who isn't honest, who is not about doing the right thing, right? So it's the same thing with the Most High. The Most High isn't going to allow spirits to enter into the kingdom willy-nilly. Scripture says that he's going to sift us amongst the nations.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to sift us, right? So that means there's a sifting process that's going to take place, right? That means he's going to be pleading with us, right? And seeing who can receive his guidance and who don't want to receive his guidance, who are rebellious, right? And those who are rebellious, they won't enter into the kingdom of heaven. They won't enter in. So, and that's the point. The point is, this is the time to get yourself right now, to endure no matter what happens, to endure, and for good or for bad, right? For good or for bad, right? The Most High is always righteous and holy. For good or for bad, don't matter what good comes, doesn't matter what bad comes, right? The Most High can make you rich today, and then tomorrow or the following week take away all your riches,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because either way, he gave the riches to you, so it's for him. He can take it away. He gave it. He can take it away, right? And that's what I'm saying, is that the kingdom is no joke, and anybody, any spirit getting into the kingdom, you have to prove yourself, right? And that endurance is the very core of you achieving eternal life or getting into kingdom of heaven or not. That endurance period, right? Because Messiah says, he that endures to the end, to him will I give power over the nations. Not to those who don't endure to the end, but to them that endure unto the end. That's why that word is so important. That word of the day is so important, right? So that's the word I'm gonna leave you with, which is the word I always use, which is endure. Keep your faith. Keep walking the straight and narrow path, and fight the good fight. And most high willing, right? If we make it, then I'll see you in the kingdom, right? That's my prayer, right? And with that, I'm going to say Shabbat Shalom to the children of Israel.
Do you want to say anything?
Can't say it any better. Like I just said, keep your faith, keep your head in the book. And still, like we always say, make sure you're watching and praying. There's some things we might miss. There's some things we might not have seen. So, like the act said, send us some of the information if it's out there, so we can see and rightly divide what's right and what's wrong, and we can see and make better decisions in these last days, because the enemy's going to be lifting up their head. The enemy's going to be making decisions in dark places. But the Most High said, anything they do in darkness shall be brought to light. Whether they've got plans to bring out diseases or whatever they've got plans to do, the Most High always like 10 steps ahead anyway, so it means nothing to the Most High. So just make sure you're keeping yourself ready, you're keeping yourself on the top of your game, so when the Most High come, we can hear those words where he says, "Good and faithful, come up, good and faithful servant," because that's our goal, that's our aim, so we can receive the promises that was made to our forefathers. And with that, I'm just gonna say, obviously, Shalom, Shabbat Shalom if you're on your Shabbat Sabbath still, and all praises to Yahweh. But Shema Mashiach Yahushua.
All right, so with that, we're going to say Shabbat Shalom, all peace and blessings, Wabati Walama, and all praises
To Yahweh.
But Shema Mashiach Yahushua. Amen and Amen.